Welcome to another edition of the Let's Be Frank Show. My name is Frank Mentone. I'm the president and publisher of the Totucket Times. And as most of you who watch the show know, our point to the show is to get people to meet some of the people in the town and to learn some things about our town. My guest this evening needs no introduction. He's been a town resident, I guess, for life. And I'm happy today to have State Representative Vincent Candelora. So Vin, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
I guess the first question and the most important question is, how did Little League go this year?
Little League went well. It was nice playing at the new Wall Fields, and we had a great season. You know, the kids had a lot of fun. I was glad I was able to keep coaching despite having session in Hartford. You know, I sort of had to juggle the two, but it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, I did, most of you know, I did Little League for a long time, and it was fun. If only we can just have the kids and maybe let the parents watch the game on a video, but that's just an opinion of mine. But anyway, you grew up in town, and most people know you, but it seems like you've been a state rep forever. How long have you been a state rep?
This was my 7th year being a state rep, and yeah, it seems longer than that. It's funny. I mean, in ways it's gone quickly, but in other ways it seems like it's been a long time.
And I know it's a full-time job, and among other things that you do. But I was reading somewhere that, because you know, I'm not big. I don't know much about politics. I'm not too bright. But
no, you're very smart for that.
You're the deputy Republican leader in the House. What does that mean?
The way it works is, you know, you have the Democrat Party and the Republican Party. The Democrats are in the majority, the Republicans are in the minority, and each side sort of picks a team captain, and that team captain has, you know, a couple of people under them, and so I'm number 2 on the Republican side in the House, and you sort of act as the co-pilot. You help out other members in your caucus, in your Republican caucus. You help them on personal issues, on legislation if they need help, and you sort of work the floor operations. You know, you keep an eye on all the members, and you fill in when the leader can't be there. So there might be budget negotiations or events that the governor wants to meet with leadership, and so you would go to those meetings.
Now, that position is picked by the Republican state reps or by the entire group?
It's chosen, your leader puts out his slate, and then it's voted on by the Republicans in the House.
All right, so that's pretty good, because there's a lot of people that have been on there longer than yourself, I would imagine.
Yeah, you know, it sort of was a roller coaster ride for me. I started out going from, you know, being a freshman in my first term to being ranking member on the Finance Committee in my second term, and you know, that's the big money committee that deals with the taxing, and so I was the Republican lead member on that committee, and then moved up into the deputy slot because somebody had retired, and I was picked for that in my third term. It's just funny how it works. You know, you're either, I guess you could look at it this way, you're in the right place at the right time or the wrong place at the wrong time.
In the wrong place. Now, you cover, just for the people who don't know, your territory is North Branford, Northford, parts of Wallingford, or all of Wallingford?
Parts of Wallingford.
And parts of East Haven, or no?
It used to be East Haven. We went through redistricting this last session, so now I have North Guilford and western part of Durham.
Oh, okay. So you're taking care of a lot of items. I know you're on tons of committees besides, you know, the state rep deal, but what committees are you serving on now in the state?
Yeah, the way it works, we have roughly 26 or 27 committees in Hartford, and they each deal with various topics. You know, you have an environment committee, you have a planning and development committee, you have an appropriations committee that deals with the spending. So the committees I serve on is finance, revenue, and bonding, which deals with all the taxation and borrowing of money. And then I'm on the Planning and Development Committee, which is really all your municipal stuff. So any issues dealing with towns and cities I serve on that committee. And then I also serve on the Regulations Review Committee, which is probably the most boring in ways, but to me it's very interesting in that you read all the regulations that are being adopted by the different agencies and you vote on them. It's a bipartisan committee, so it's made up of 8 Democrats and 8 Republicans. It's the only committee that's bipartisan in that fashion. And you need 9 votes to approve the regulations. So you truly need to compromise with both sides of the aisle and with the different agencies when you're crafting the different regulations. And then the last committee I'm on, which is not really publicized, but I'm on the screening committee, and I chair that committee, and that's an interesting responsibility. You review every bill you have to read that's on the House calendar, so you pretty much read every single bill that's voted out of committee, and then you work with the Democrats to decide whether or not that bill should be voted on in the House. And so you sort of negotiate. If there's a bill that you think isn't drafted well, you try to hold it up and say, look, we have to either fix it or throw it in the trash can.
So that's now just to go over it. It's considered a full-time job? I mean, I know the hours are full-time.
Yeah.
How does the whole?
It's technically a part-time job, but it does kind of turn into a full-time job. The way it works is session runs in the odd years. It runs for a 16-week term from January to June. In the even years, it runs for a 13-week term, which is roughly February to early May. And in the first year, the long session, you're dealing with the budget, and that's why it's a little bit longer. And we vote on a 2-year budget. In the second year, we're technically only supposed to be addressing financial issues, to tweak the budget if you need to. But what's evolved over the years is that you're doing just as much in the short session as the long one. So it seems like you're always working on legislation and issues.
So you're definitely going from January to June.
Right, through the committee process and that's when legislation is passed. Anytime we go up in session, if people, they hear us going up in October to vote on something, that would be a special session, which would be called for a particular purpose. Outside of those short windows, we really don't do any legislative work. But like right now, what I'm dealing with is constituent issues. So people call me up on the phone, and I'll deal with the agencies. If people have, issues with state aid, they have issues with motor vehicle all the time. I get phone calls and try to work out people's car registrations and things like that.
So we're going to do this at the end of the show, but if we can do it now, we'll try it now too, because you brought it up. As far as constituents that want to get in touch with you, they can reach you. Hopefully they can put it up on screen. I think I threw him off because originally, there we go, Vincent Candelora, you got his phone number, you got his email address. If you have a situation that you'd like him to address, you can check out one of those numbers. And from what I understand and hear from the people, obviously you keep winning the election, so you're obviously getting back to people right away and helping them out.
Yeah, I try to. I enjoy working and trying to help people out in their problems. The other thing that people should know is that if you have an issue, if you think a law is dumb or something needs to be fixed or changed, reach out and bring the issue to me. There have been several occasions where I've gotten legislation passed because I ran into somebody in the street and they said, this really needs to be corrected. And it turns out to be a good idea. And so it really is nice when the process works that way because, that's what representative government is. That's why we're here. And it's supposed to be part-time because you're supposed to be back in your district, in the community, so you can get input before you go up to Hartford to vote on things.
And plus working a normal job because this job doesn't pay
No.
barely pay enough to feed your family. So.
Yeah, people think when they see the license plate on my car, they think that that's a state car, and the reality is that I get the license plate. I have
There
to
you go.
maintain my same registration, and I have to pay an extra $14 above and beyond And it isn't like the federal government. It's much more limited.
And you do read everything now. That's your new, but you were supposed to read everything right from the start,
Well,
right?
you know, and that's kind of how I ended up in this position. Honestly, I try to read everything, every bill that comes before us. You can do it if you pace yourself. But sadly, there are not a lot of people that read the bills. And what I have found is that you end up getting a lot of authority by reading all the bills, because people now know that they need to go to you to make sure you're okay with something. The beautiful thing about the House versus the Senate is the House is like the Roman Colosseum. There's so many people. There's 151 representatives in the room. So you can't really control what somebody's going to do. And the fun part is when an issue pops up, a bill comes up, if you don't like it, you can get up and start talking about it for hours. And it sort of will put people into meltdown mode. So there are procedural maneuvers that you can do in the House that you don't have that opportunity to do in the Senate. And by reading every bill, you end up having a little bit more authority in the room, because you can get up and speak on issues. Then people start coming to you to try to put out the fire that you're starting.
Well, it's nice to know somebody's reading all the bills,
Yeah.
because I emceed or whatever one of the debates a few years ago, and I don't know why people keep calling me. I have a face for radio, but they keep asking me to do this. I guess I'm the only one left. And one of the people running for office, somebody asked him about a bill, and he said, "Well, you don't expect me to read all those." And I said, "Not at the debate." You know, I don't know if you
That's
want
the
to
wrong
make that
time.
public, but let's switch gears just a little bit. I mean, as far as the economy, because that's what everybody is interested in, both for the state and the town, which affect each other. You get reports from the different media groups every week almost on our economic recovery. It's good, it's bad, we're not recovering. In your opinion, are we starting to see an economic recovery?
Well, you know, on a personal level, I think I see it a little bit in my business, and I think other people, some people have just stopped complaining. But I think there is a little bit of an economic turnaround. From a budget perspective, with the state of Connecticut, we're not doing as well. Fitch, you know, the rating agencies just downgraded us in our bonding. They're giving Connecticut a negative outlook. And in part is because of the way the budget's been crafted, not just over this past budget, but over the last 2 years. And that is still going to put us on tenuous ground for an economic recovery, because you know, I fear that some of our bigger businesses are going to move out of the state. And so we do have our work cut out for us. You know, 2 years ago, we taxed a lot, if everyone remembers. I mean, I certainly was getting the phone calls. And now in this biennium, we had a $3 billion or $2 billion deficit. Rather than tax to fix it, you know, the Democrats just borrowed significantly to fill it in. We did see some spending cuts, but it's not a structure that really is well sustained for the future.
Right. So, on a positive, what are the good things we can look forward to, and what are the bad things we can look forward to with this new budget that you guys have just?
Well, I mean, I think the good news for North Branford is that most of the financial aid was kept intact, so that we didn't see any big cuts to municipal aid, which was good, because that just would turn into a tax increase on our property tax bills if we saw those funds cut. I think the other good piece of the budget is that there really has been a concerted effort by the Democrats in the legislature and the Republicans alike to work together to reduce earmarks in our bonding. So we're trying to get those bond projects under control. The bad things are that we have a employee contract of no layoffs for the next 4 years that's locked in, that is difficult for us to be able to balance this budget without looking at attrition and layoffs in government. We don't see the revenues turning around to sustain what we're spending, and so that's why, you know, when we saw the tax increases to fill the deficit 2 years ago, we turned around and 2 years later we had another deficit. So we need to get spending under control, and that's something I think that we're going to see in the next session.
Right. Now what impact is the new budget going to have on, I know North Branford, most of the people, everybody who sees this show is from North Branford, our town. How's that going to affect the different things, education, funding, and things
Yeah,
like
I mean, I think the biggest thing for the town itself as a whole, the education funding is intact. We got a little bit of extra money. It was somewhere around 20,000. So we're pretty much flatlined with the funding. The one thing that on the town side, they're getting a little bit of extra money that they got last year, but the negative part of it is that they're getting it in a different form. For instance, we used to get about $100 million of Pequot money that was not earmarked, or 100,000, excuse me. So the town could just spend that money the way they wanted, and typically it went into the operating budget, it paid for somebody's salary. The state now cut that funding, and they're giving it to them in the form of Town Aid Road. So we're getting twice as much money for Town Aid Road, so we could do more road repair projects, but we're seeing a cut in that free money that we could use to pay somebody's salary. So on the town side, we're seeing a little bit of a shift. And that's something that the council had to grapple with this last budget cycle.
Now, does that mean, now you said something about roads, does that mean that someday Route 80 and 139 and that whole area is going to finally be finished?
Well, that's a whole nother issue. And I tell you, we could explain why phase 1, 2, and 3, why it played out the way it was and how phase 3 got delayed. But what sort of blew my mind is, did we really have to tear up Route 80 now and start doing all the milling work when you have the Q Bridge just being put online? I tried getting a hold of DOT before it was happening and put a stop to it, but I found out pretty much at the same time the town did that they were actually scheduling to do Route 80, the entire length. I look forward to it being done. I travel it every day too, and hopefully it will work out well for everybody.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun trying to get into to the different
These
places.
poor businesses.
These businesses are like, I tried to go the other day, I tried to go into the Park Rec, and they have which isn't sufficient, the tar is not even yet. So they have a board that's supposed to, alleviate the bump.
Right.
But, fortunately my car's falling apart anyway, so it doesn't matter if I go over bumps and stuff, but it's not a fun thing.
No.
But now you did mention at the top of the show that Hartford's in its long session this year. That means that legislators can propose bills. What are some of the things that you're working on?
Well, two of the bills I did that I was happy to get through the session and the governor signed into law. One was on school security. North Branford is one of the first towns to implement school security with the foresight to wanting to have armed guards. And the state statutes actually were silent on that issue. There was not a specific way of how to do it. And the state started sort of doing a patchwork job of trying to figure out how a town could actually have armed security guards. And they were using the private security guard statutes to try to accomplish that. And we saw that it really wasn't a good fit. And I worked on the legislation, and we were able to get that passed that now sets the criteria for a town to have guards if they choose to have them. And the two ways is, one, through a police officer, or two, through a retired police officer that they have to go through a post-training program, which the state already has put in place, so it doesn't cost any additional money to do, and train these officers to be able to be security guards for the schools.
I find that was interesting, because I know when this first happened, North Branford ran out and we got ourselves armed guards, but they've never been armed. So is that what you're working on?
Right.
Come September, are they going to be armed? Are they not ready yet? Or?
Well, they now can be armed if they go through the procedure that the state law sets forth. So now we have that vehicle. Before they were being armed, frankly, I think the state misled our town a little bit in how to do it. And they were trying to arm them, like I said, as private security guards. And there were just some issues with how you do that, some technical problems with the custody of the weapon. The private security guard statutes deal with corporations. And if you look at the legislative history, schools are not corporations. They're public entities. So it wasn't a clean fit for them. And I think once the issues kind of came to light, everyone sort of said, what do we do? And so it was good that the legislature stepped up. Because the legislature, as a general policy, when they did the Newtown Task Force, they found that they didn't want to do armed guards. They wanted to not have any of that at all. So the task force, when they came out with the legislation dealing with Newtown, didn't address the issue at all. And so I was happy that they took the issue up, despite their philosophical feelings being against it, and we gave a roadmap for the schools, so if they want to do it, they can do it.
Right. And what else are you working on?
The other bill that we did was it was a natal screening for ALD, which is a genetic disorder. The Kelly family out of Branford had a son that was diagnosed with ALD. Once a child becomes symptomatic, and the boys get it, the girls are the carriers. Once the boys become symptomatic, it results in death eventually. And it's a rare disease. There is screening for it now, and if you catch it at infancy, you could actually cure the child from the disease. And so we were able to get a law passed that now requires the screening for all the babies. Blood is already taken, so it doesn't change the process. It costs $1.50 per child to do, but it saves in the long run, because when a child ends up becoming symptomatic, it's very costly. And the movie Lorenzo's Oil, which I never saw, but that movie is based on this particular disease. And so I actually worked with Pat Widlitz in Guilford and Lonnie Reed in Branford and Len Fasano in North Haven to get that legislation passed.
Wow. So we're working hard. We got about 5 minutes, I'm getting told. So anything else we want to address?
Yeah, I think, the session overall, I think we saw a lot of good legislation come out of it, like I'm pointing to. And one of the things that I have to say that was different from most years is how well the speaker worked with the minority party. And the other side of the aisle worked with us in getting legislation passed. The budget is always a very hot, contentious issue that right now we'll never agree on, philosophically. But it was good to see, despite those differences, we were able to work on different pieces of legislation. And the new speaker, Brendan Sharkey, who's out of Hamden, I'm always of the philosophy that you have the two-party system up there to sort of challenge each other. Mm-hmm. And you want to hear each other's arguments, because it helps you come up with the best piece of legislation. So I might not vote for the legislation in the end, but you might fix it to make it the best it can be once you listen to what I have to say. And we saw a lot more of that give and take. A lot more amendments were offered on the floor and accepted. In years past, we never would adopt an amendment. Once that bill was called, that bill was going as is, even if it was a piece of garbage. So I have to say it's been a good process right now, where it's functioning a lot better, and it's probably going in the opposite direction from what our federal government is going, and that's a good thing.
Yeah, I always used to have I had an old publisher who used to think that he was the old expert,
right.
And he always used to say, without friction you can't walk. Because I used to say, this one's arguing with that. I just started in the bed, and I get all nervous with the arguments. And he'd say, if there's no friction, you can't walk. If you don't hear both sides of the story, you can't fix anything. You're just agreeing with everybody. You just keep going. So he was, pretty good guy. Anything else? So when's the run for governor?
There's such a vacuum right now. We have so many things up in the air of who's running for governor next. I mean, I take one day at a time, really. You're basically one election away from being irrelevant. Right. I enjoy what I'm doing right now. The nice thing about state rep being part-time is I'm still able to work at my business and do things like coach Little League and get involved in Boy Scouts. So it's a good balance to kind of keep all of those things going together. And I do enjoy, I used to practice law, and I got
Right.
out of that. And on a personal level, it's nice to sort of get back into law at some level. So while I'm not interpreting law and going to court, I get to help write legislation on the other end, and so that makes it interesting. It kind of keeps your mind going.
That's excellent. Hopefully, you've got something out of our show this evening. We're going to put the Vinny's contact on the screen again, and this way here, if you do have a situation where, well, like he said, if you have a law that you don't like, or once in a while you can even call or email him and tell him he's doing a good job, because I know sometimes you never get that side of the coin. You're always getting the, how come you did this?
I have to say that this district is the best district to represent, because I do get complimented, and people are we have a good community. They're reasonable. They treat you well, and it's a good balance. I watch some of what the other reps go through, and they get beat up and tortured, and we're all human beings. And generally, I have to say that North Branford's been great.
All right, great. Well, I thank Vin for being here this evening. Totucket Times, if you need anything, my email address is coming up on the screen eventually. And we thank our once again, we thank Vinny, but we thank our directors this evening, Walter and Lisa. Walter is also our new station manager, and we look forward to getting more active in the community with the Totucket TV station. So once again, thanks for watching, and until next time, be safe. Joan. So she's sitting over there, and she's making. And Hugo used to put the